Hi everybody, this is Jamie from the Unlikely Homeschool, and you're joining me today for part 2 of my 5-day long series, How to Schedule Your Entire Homeschool Year. If you joined me yesterday, we talked a little bit about the whys of scheduling a year in advance or even a month in advance, a week in advance. Today we're going to start with some of the hows. And the very first step in doing that is determining a homeschool calendar for your year. And there's 4 basic parts to that. The first being you'd have to contact your district or your school authorities to find out what is required in your state as far as yearly attendance. Most homeschool curriculums follow a 36-week plan, but your district might be different. So you need to find out what is required as far as how many days or weeks your kids need to be in attendance for school. Once you do that, then you need to determine what kind of homeschool year would you like to have. I tend to be a traditional homeschool year kind of girl where we start somewhere in September and end somewhere at the end of May or first part of June, but you can also take some alternatives and try Sabbath schooling. I'll provide a really great link for that on my blog to explain what that is, or maybe you'll do all year round schooling. So you just have to decide kind of when you want your school year to start and when you want it to end, what kind of school year you want to have. I'm going to assume for the sake of this video that you're going to have a traditional school year calendar, so that when I discuss how to put that all together, that's what I'll be doing. But you can take all of my thoughts and tweak it for whichever method you care to choose. So the third step is to determine what days off you'd like to have in your school year. In order to do that, I usually whip out last year's homeschool calendar and I kind of figure out what days we took off last year and kind of tweak it to meet this year's needs. But if this is your first year homeschooling, or maybe your first year planning an entire year, you probably don't have a last year's calendar, but maybe you have a family planner or a family calendar that you can refer to find out birthdays, family birthdays, or holiday events that you'd like to celebrate and not have to focus on school. So you just basically need to have a list of all of those days that you can foresee you might want to take off in the school year. If you know right ahead that you are expecting a baby and you'll want to take a couple of weeks off for that, you can jot that down on your list. Maybe you're traveling out of state for a family wedding and you know the dates of those things. I typically like to take off for my children's birthdays, and we celebrate those by having a family day. I take off about 3 weeks at Christmas time, a day or so at Thanksgiving, a day or so at New Year's. I don't usually take a spring break because instead of a spring break, I like to toss in a couple of random days throughout the year where we can have a day off and mom can get caught up on life and the kids can enjoy a day. And it's always nice to break up the school year with a couple of random days off. So that's what I do instead of having a spring break. But once I determine what those days are, I then, step number 4, need to plug them into my calendar. I use a well-planned day planner, which is a planner specifically designed for homeschool moms, but there are many of these on the market, and so you just have to find one that works for you. I happen to love this one, so I've been using it for the last couple of years, and I'll provide a link for that on my blog as well. Now that I know the days that I want to take off, I open my calendar, and one of the great things about this calendar is it has a month at a glance page, and it also has a week by week daily lesson plan area. And so I start at my month at a glance page, and I'm going to actually skip ahead to October because I know of an event that my whole family will be taking off in that time. My sister will be coming to visit the 17th and 18th of October, and so I'm going to write that in on my month by month planner so I see it at a glance. But then I also need to take that same information and find it in the week by week lesson plan section and mark that day off. I'll show you what I usually do here. I usually write at the top of the column what we're taking it off for, and then I'll put a little squiggly line there so that it is obvious to me that we're having a day off school, but I'm still leaving the space open enough that if I change my mind or the schedule gets changed at all, I can jot a few things down and still be able to read it because it'll still be legible. So I go from month to month on my calendar, filling in days. You'll notice on my calendar I filled in days that we will be having co-op. And I want to make a note of that because we typically don't have our traditional school time on co-op days. And so I mark that off on the calendar and then fill it in the lesson plan area. That way, when I actually go to fill in my lesson plans, I will see that little notation that I've made to not schedule school on that day, and I need to skip that column and continue on. So that's the final step in determining your homeschool calendar. Once you have all of those days that you know right up front you want to have off school, you can kind of determine, well, I like to determine what my very last day of school is. To me, the last day of school is more important than the first day of school because by the end of school, I'm kind of ready to be done. So I like to have a clear goal of when the last day of school will be and then backtrack 36 weeks in order to determine when my first day of school will need to be. So typically, I like my last day of school to be on the last day of May. And you can see right here that I've pinned that in for May 30th. And so from there, I then need to just backtrack and count back 36 weeks all the way back through, and it should make me land somewhere the very first week in September or the first week in June. Remember to skip all of those weeks or days that you have marked off that you won't be in school attendance. So starting with this last day in May, I'd count 36, 35, 34, 33, all the way up through, skipping those 3 weeks in December and the few random days around until it puts me at September and I jot down my first day of school. So that's how I establish my school year calendar.